Good morning, guys. Welcome to Wednesday. We're halfway through the week. It is Ash Wednesday. So for all who celebrate, best of luck to you in this holy month, the next 40 days. Also believe the beginning of Ramadan started last night as well, if I'm not mistaken. Good luck to all who are fasting. You might notice in my background today, I have a weird.
Oh no, that's tonight. That's when the club.
Yeah,
the club
I know,
club
it
is
has
open.
a club feeling. So
Yep.
the backstory on that, my husband for Valentine's Day bought this for me. It surprised me with this. It is my Twitter handle. Don't tell him this. I don't know how I feel about it. So if you're watching and in the chat, can you read it? Do you like it? Is it a distraction? I'm curious what people think. And I promise I won't tell my husband if you don't. So
And if you're listening on Apple or Spotify, it is a hot pink neon sign that says at Rachael Bade. So yes, you can't miss it if you're watching.
You definitely can't.
Put on your sunglasses.
Good times. Okay, guys, we have a great show for you today. We're going to talk about conspiracy theories. I don't know if I call them conspiracy theory. Literally just both parties have a lot of concerns about the midterm election security. So we're going to dig into both, and they are very much at war with each other, Republicans and Democrats on this issue. It should be a nice, fun, heated conversation between Dan and Sean. We'll talk
and you.
about,
I mean, let's be candid. On the
yes,
text.
I clearly have opinions about
there was
this.
controversy over that word conspiratorial.
For
Rachel
sure.
was
Yeah.
not a fan of it.
No, I think that there's some people who are about conspiracy theories. Some people are completely rooted in fact, and there's just a difference.
Well, we are always rooted in fact here on this show, The Huddle. So this is great. Dan. Okay, we'll also talk about President Trump's, the administration's attack on, I guess you can't call it an attack. What happened with James Tallarico on The Late Show, like not being able to go on. He is surging right now in Texas. And so we'll talk about grievance politics and what it means to be a Dem who is either attacked by Trump or undercut by Trump and what that does to your polling. We'll talk about the White House trying to once again refocus the message on affordability. There was a late night huddle yesterday at the Capitol Hill Club with senior staff trying to get back on message on this. And at the same time, reporting that we are very close to war with Iran. So we're going to talk about how do you do both of those things, drive a message when we're still going to be talking clearly about foreign policy issues, at least for a while longer. We'll discuss some rumors surrounding Alito on the Supreme Court, whether he might be retiring, and a couple of fun political entertainment pieces. Kimmel's going to be raising money for Democrats, and Bruce Springsteen is going to be trolling the president here in Washington, D.C. This summer. So
way more than that. He's starting in Minnesota.
Yeah. Not a political statement at all.
No.
Okay, so first, our day book. In Maryland, House Minority Leader Hakeem Jeffries is heading to Annapolis. He's going to be meeting today with Governor Wes Moore. This obviously comes as Democrats are pushing for Maryland to gerrymander and redraw the lines there to try to squeeze out another seat. The issue here is that Moore is not the problem, right? Moore is on his side, but Democratic State Senate President Bill Ferguson is the one standing in the way. And Jeffries actually sent some warning shots to him. I think it was over this weekend when he did an interview with CNN saying he might need to have a frank conversation with this guy as well. Dan, do you think he talks to him today?
Yeah. I mean, no offense to the minority leader, but he's not the most popular man in the Senate president's district. So, I mean, good luck with that.
Why were you laughing, Sean? Chime in.
Because Hakeem Jeffries is not somebody that anyone fears.
Yeah, I mean, that's it.
I mean, look,
True.
Nancy Pelosi is like half his size, and people feared her. Hakeem Jeffries is the kind of, I mean, he comes across as very much of a wimp.
Yeah.
He definitely doesn't have the iron fist that Nancy Pelosi did. He's young, so we'll see in a few years.
Oh, by the way, I mean, just if you really wanted to, bring the brass knuckles, Nancy's from Baltimore.
From Baltimore. I know, that's the irony.
Her father was the famed mayor of the city. If you wanted to send a message like, we're going to try to primary and take you out, you would have people like Nancy Pelosi, the godmother, let's call her, pay a visit. But
why doesn't she pay? Why isn't she involved? I know why she's involved, because they don't want her involved, actually.
Well, no, that's not true. She's super involved, but she's involved on raising money and kind of on the more macro. She's just not going to get into, one seat in Maryland like that.
Well, there was I talked to someone very close with her who worked for her when she was speaker, who told me that early on, when Hakeem took over, there was sort of this message that they wanted some distance. So that could also be part of it. Interesting. Okay, at 1 p.m., Caroline Leavitt's going to be holding a press briefing. We'll be tuning into that. 3 o'clock, the president participates in Black History Month, a reception at the White House. We have to mention that this obviously comes just a few days after he posted that truth video that depicted the Obamas as monkeys, saw a huge blowback, including from his own party, and ended up taking it down. So it'll be an interesting reception there.
I'll let you know. I'll give you. We'll have a readout tomorrow.
Are you going, Sean? For real?
Yeah, of course I am.
Of course you are. Who else is going? Do you know?
Who else is our Black History Month correspondent? Sean?
Yeah, I know. I mean, listen. There will be, I think, a lot of people there.
Okay.
But I will say this. The irony is that the guy can't win. If he hadn't held something, they would have said he didn't hold the Black History Month event. And so,
correct.
It's just, you can't win when you're Trump.
Yeah, because I think it was MLK Day. He didn't do anything public and he got attacked, to your point. Yep.
Interesting. Okay. And then
I will say this. He will wrap himself, my guess, around Jesse Jackson and a lot of we talked about this, so I'm not going to belabor it, but I will say I would be shocked if we don't hear a lot about Jesse Jackson.
Apparently he was truthing about him and it's like truthing pictures of them
from
back in the day last night. At least I read that this morning. You also flagged for us, Sean, that Mark Zuckerberg is going to be taking the stand in a major social media case today.
I just think this is a big. I mean, look, I wish I was a little less of a skeptic, so I'll admit that right up front. But I will say that this is there's a reason that everybody's keeping an eye on this one case, because this is a question of whether or not the floodgates there's a crack in them, and this is social media writ large and the responsibility that they have, especially when it comes to kids. So I will be very interested to see how this goes. Zuckerberg, taking the stand today, what he says, what he admits to. As we all know, once lawyers get involved, it's a very different, situation as far as what some of the folks will say on the stand, because you want to be careful that you don't lean too far in. But this is going to be, I think, very consequential going forward, how social media, the legal exposure that they have.
And for those who don't remember, it was David Boies deposing Bill Gates back in 2000 when he caught Bill Gates, and it helped with the breaking up of some of that stuff. I mean, so no doubt Zuckerberg's got the best lawyers in the world and
for sure
has been preparing. But to Sean's point, once you raise your right hand, it's all fun and games no more. Yep,
that's for sure. All right, let's do a quick word from our sponsor. Sean, you want to take Cozy Earth?
Oh, yeah. Look, I mean, I told you guys this. It's especially as it got a little warmer yesterday, but it's still chilly at night. And there's nothing better when I get ready to jump into the Cozy Earth pajamas, especially after I've been in the joggers all day long. But I'm telling you, morning till night, overnight, there's no time of the day, friend, foe, that you can't satisfy with something from Cozy Earth. The blankets, the towels, the joggers, the pants, the eye masks. I mean, even the candles. We've talked about that bubble blanket is something that people fight over. The great part about it is you will enjoy it. But if you're ever looking for that gift for that most hard to find person, you will not go wrong. You talked about your husband. I gave it to my wife and in-laws. I mean, everybody loved their Cozy Earth gift. So take care of yourself. Think of that hard to find person. Go to CozyEarth.com. Use code HUDDLE. You get 20% off. Talk about this is help power the Trump economy. Buy Cozy Earth. Go to CozyEarth.com and use that code HUDDLE for up to 20% off.
Sean, I have a question. What is the earliest you will put on your pajamas? If you're home for the night, is it like a 5:30, 6 o'clock thing? Or do you have I can't put on pajamas before, 8 or 9 o'clock?
It's a really good question. I would say,
or I don't know that
I would say 5, and it's not like a hard and fast. If it was 4 o'clock, I just think that's when I start to transition.
Yeah. Okay. Rachel, you have a cutoff, or do you just?
I don't have a hard and fast rule. In fact, like, I feel like there have been like Saturdays where I have stayed in pajamas all day.
Really?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah.
All right. Very nice.
Can't do that with this show, obviously. But I mean, like, I switch out sweats and just sweatshirts for pajamas. So, like, you know, it's all comfort.
Sure. Okay.
All good stuff. All right, guys. Thanks to Cozy Earth. Let's jump in. So, as I said at the top, warnings about election security are just at this boiling point right now on both sides. There are reports that the White House, worried about fraud in the midterms, doesn't just want to back ID requirements for registering to vote. They're also now apparently pushing for a complete ban on mail-in voting, except for, of course, folks in the military or folks with disabilities, et cetera. There's another election bill working through the House right now that is being described as the Save America Act on steroids. It goes way further than that. We're going to talk about that here in a second. And then on the other side, you have Democrats openly accusing Republicans of trying to sort of steal. Not try to sort of steal. They're accusing them of trying to steal the election and saying that they're, you know, pointing to evidence of fraud or pointing to fraud without evidence, and basically trying to make this an issue to undermine the results of the election. And it turns out they have some sympathy. They're getting some sympathy in the media. The New York Times has this story up this morning that very much, I mean, you read this lead, guys. You read this lead. The strict voting identification measure that Republicans have pushed through the House is just their opening salvo in a broader legislative effort aimed at keeping control of Congress this fall and helping amplify the president's false claims of mass voter fraud in the event that they lose. I mean, that is the New York Times taking a side, saying this is all.
What do you mean? Wait, hold on. Like, to act like this is new, the New York Times is an appendage of the DNC. So, like, I just don't. I mean, that to me is not any kind of shocker.
Well, I feel like it's very clear that people do have concerns about the security of voting. Two things can be true at once. You can want voter ID to vote and also not, you know, be of the mind that the 2020 election was stolen and that, you know, we're trying to steal it again or something like this. Like,
the false argument in this is that it all began and ended with 2020. Voter integrity on the right has been an issue for decades. Barack Obama himself, during his primary, joked about how Chicago, my city, Chicago, does not have a great record when it comes to election integrity. Like, he joked about how Chicago historically stole elections. We've talked about this, Nixon, Kennedy, going back to Tammany Hall. I mean, like, the idea that this is a new phenomena is what Democrats want you to believe. They want to point to 2020 and say, this is all. No, I've been in an election since 1994 is my first one. We've been concerned about election integrity ever since then. I mean, that was my first, and it goes way back before that. It was an issue in the 60s. This idea, Carter Baker did a commission in 2005 where it was a big issue then. So there is no credence to this idea that it just became a Republican issue. Literally, Jimmy Carter talked about it in the Carter Baker Commission in 2005.
Dan, you're sitting there quiet, and I know you have things to say. So what's your response here?
Well, I mean, I just think it's somewhat like crazy the way both parties here are heading down what I think is somewhat going to be a dangerous path, which is, to Sean's point, there has always been election integrity focused by the Republicans. But there have been times that it has sure felt like those efforts have been used to try to make it slightly more difficult, ironically only in Democratic precincts, to vote. Now, look, these are shenanigans that have gone on for years, right? Go back to 2004 in Ohio, Republican-controlled state at the time, still is today, where you had these strong Democratic precincts that had like 2 voting areas. And then you had rural Republican areas that had like 20, right? And so you have these super duper long lines in Democratic precincts where some people will say, you know, look, I got to get to work, got to get to school, whatever, can't vote. And if it's really easy, then you're turning your people out, you know, and through the line. And so in the Democrats' opinion, this is a solution kind of in search of a problem, which is they believe after 2020, when the allegation were that the election was stolen, but again, no proof was ever presented, that, and we've talked a little bit about this, I cannot emphasize enough how much Democrats believe that Republicans are teeing up all of these allegations of illegal immigrants may vote, and that not only will they say that the results in certain areas are questionable, but then after Mike Johnson refused to speak the woman from Arizona, that they are going to intentionally delay seating people to preserve the majority for as long as humanly possible. All I can just tell the audience is I cannot, like, I thought it was a conspiracy theory in the fringes of our party, but it's not just Mark Warner. It's so many other people. Barack Obama, the New York Times is now in on it. Our party is absolutely convinced Republicans are going to attempt what happened in 2020, which is to just put up as many, obstacles as possible to certifying an election. That's just where they are.
Here's the thing so here is the thing that doesn't hold water. When it comes to voter ID, so the Republicans have asked for two things: voter ID to vote and proof of citizenship. On voter ID, as I said, I did a show with three very diverse Democrats: Julian, very legally steeped; Mike Nellis, very progressive; Johanna Maska, who is a Biden staffer. Every one of them agreed. This is not a position that's extreme. Okay. Number two, when you listen to every single leading Democrat, Chuck Schumer, Hillary Clinton, Barack Obama, all of them have said that voter ID is a smart thing. It's just suddenly they've all decided now to call it Chuck Crow 2.0. I'm now rebranding this as Chuck Schumer's thing. But Chuck Schumer is on the record literally saying the only reason that you would oppose this is if you wanted fraud, right? I've got the video. I can play it. He literally said that year after year for decades. Why suddenly did that change? Democrats have a history. They let 4 to 10 million people flood this country during the years of Biden. Now, all of them say it's a bad idea. Like, none of them said anything during Biden. Suddenly, in forum after forum, they said we went too far, and which is interesting. They give them driver's licenses when they come in, and then they go, I can't believe Republicans dare think that this could be probably an issue. You literally let them into the country, you give them a license, and then you say, but there's no way that these folks would ever vote. I mean, why? That's absurd. I mean, it is ridiculous not to think that.
Well, I mean, this is the thing, right? So Sean's teeing up a straw person. There could be a problem. There may be a problem.
You lock your door, Dan, at night. Do you lock your door?
Sean, no,
do you lock your door?
So Sean, here's the thing. You talked about the fact that there have been allegations of voter fraud since the 60s. Since the 60s. Multiple commissions, multiple investigations, multiple judges have ruled. So where the left says is you keep creating one of the things that happened. Wait, hold on.
That was Barack Obama that said
one of the things that happened in 2020 over and over and over was judges scolded Trump to say, you cannot come to the court and tell us we have to disprove your allegation. You have to bring us facts of alleged violations, which they would never, ever do.
Go back to my question. Let me ask you this. Do you lock your door at night?
No, I don't, Sean.
You don't lock the door to your house?
No, we don't. Because we don't worry that people, and I didn't when I lived in DC either. We didn't worry that people were going to break into our house. Every state has
you should definitely always lock your door.
Oh my God. I
mean, that's great.
Wait,
but,
okay.
My point is, the reason I did this wasn't to call out your security system, but was to say most people don't lock their doors because they've been broken into. The bank doesn't put things in a vault because they've been held up. You protect what you value. And I think the idea of saying until you can prove there's massive voter fraud, we won't protect your ballot is insane.
Yeah. Okay. I agree with Sean on that because just because there's not proof doesn't mean there won't be an issue in the future. But wait, I just want to say, like, my thought on the Dems right now is, like, at some point they could look like the boy who cried wolf here. Like, I get that they are concerned about what happened in 2020. Totally understand that, right? But, like, this is an issue that's popular with the American public. And if you really do think that Republicans are going to try to screw with the midterms, like, wouldn't you wait until like that actually happens to raise an alarm? Because you raise the alarm now.
The catch-22 on elections is this, and I've gone through 2 recounts. The issue is this, and Dan wants to talk about cases. Go back and read a lot of what these cases actually said, what the judges said, which is there is no redress, right? So the election occurred. You didn't bring it up before the election. Therefore, there's no recourse. So you can't say, okay, well, now that there's fraud and now that we've proven that 5 people voted illegally, what do you do? The election already occurred. We can't call for a new election. So it's a very catch-22, and this is where Democrats have created the perfect mousetrap. They let people into the country. They give them a license, which is what you need to register to vote. And they say, well, they'll never break the law again when it comes to this. And oh, by the way, you can't audit the voter rolls to see who it was because they've made that illegal as well. So the mousetrap is perfect.
Sean, well, hold on a second.
Very quickly, we should also mention this.
Sean said it 5 times now. We did not give them driver's license, Sean. I know the right is upset. Texas and Florida are the 2 biggest states with illegal immigrants, my man. Are you telling me that Ron DeSantis and the Texas governor handed out driver's license to illegals? Of course not. You don't have to answer the question. It's so absurd. So, I mean, look, I get it. The whole reason we put this topic on here was not to relitigate J6 and all the conspiracy theories. The whole reason that I think we put it on here was both parties are getting so fired up that the other is trying to steal elections that I do think like this is going to become more and more of an issue, and there will probably be some combustible points.
Can I just make one point? I'll read you this. And again, I'm glad to, I'm well aware of which party started this on redistricting. So I'll let Dan chastise me when it comes to redistricting. This is the Virginia ballot, the referendum that's going to be put in front of Virginia voters in the Commonwealth in April. Okay. This is how Democrats have framed this issue. Should the Constitution of Virginia be amended to allow the General Assembly to temporarily adopt new congressional lines to restore fairness in upcoming elections?
Okay. If you're in power, you get to write those things.
No, I get it. But that's like, and again, I'm not, hey, look, my view is when you get it, like, God bless them, like you win an election. But the idea that Republicans got hammered for Texas, which the DOJ told them they needed to do, and they took advantage of it. Fair enough. DOJ said that one district needed to be redrawn. So they took advantage of the entire situation. I will admit that. But to then go into Virginia and say, we're restoring temporary fairness, you go from a 6-5 to a 10-1. You're going to have 5 congressional districts in Southwest Virginia start in Arlington. That's not fairness. Now, if you want to just say, screw it, we want an election, I'm fine with that. But don't lie. And right now, that's a lie, what you're telling me.
It's a ballot initiative. People can vote it down then. You don't like it, vote it down.
I will. But I'm just saying that, like, you talk about stealing.
And river Republicans. You got caught with your pants down, and it's not fun.
Can I just, I know we were moving into redistricting, which is the second part of the segment that we wanted to get to, but can I just flag really quick this, the Save America Act on steroids that's moving through the House, because it would also ban universal voting by mail, prohibit the counting of ballots received after Election Day. It gives the Department of Homeland Security access to voter rolls and prohibits voters from giving sealed mailed ballot packets to someone else for delivery, which is allowed in 18 states. Like, Sean, there's got to be some risk here for Republicans, like going too far on this with the mail-in voting thing, right? Because there were a couple examples, I think, in Playbook this morning, or maybe it was in Axios. I can't remember where I read it, but there have been examples where Republicans were behind on Election Day, and ballots that, were sent in that were counted a day or two later, even though they were postmarked on Election Day, ended up winning. So, like, the mail-in voting thing, I don't quite understand that, and I wonder if there could be more blowback.
So let me make 2 points on this, and I'll lead with the positive for Dan. I do think that requiring ID and citizenship is a no-brainer, right? And I don't think that should be in question for anybody.
Agreed.
Going beyond that, I agreed with what my colleague here on the left has said in the past, which is, if we as Republicans go down the path about dictating time and place and manner of elections, which is constitutionally something that has been awarded to the states, then when we lose a majority at some point, God forbid, then we will Democrats will have the full right to say, you did it, we will do it. So I just stole Dan's talking point because I agree with him beyond requiring what I don't think is controversial, which is that you actually have to be a citizen to vote. Time, place, and manner are constitutional duties awarded to the state. And I think we've got to be careful. I would much rather see an effort to empower states to do this and use a lot of that money that the president has and his capital to get the states to do these kind of reforms. And so that's it. The second thing is, and this is what I want to, this is where I want to make sure I'm clear. There is a big difference between absentee ballots, which I and the president and Republicans support for overseas military personnel and people who are sick or have a thing. Virginia had that forever. Every state and territory had absentee ballots, and it was never a problem. It was Democrats that wanted to move to universal ballots for everyone on voter rolls, which is, as I noted, in the 2005 Jimmy Carter Baker Commission, ripe for fraud. And there is no one in the world that can tell me that when you send a ballot to every single person's mailbox, that doesn't have an element of fraud. It just doesn't even pass the smell test. There is a big difference. No one could not vote absentee in this country in any state or territory prior to these reforms. This idea that you need 90 days and we need to mail a ballot to everyone is absurd.
Dan, respond real quickly, and then we'll move on. We could keep
talking. I mean, look,
just say yes.
The comedy of all of this is, do you know who had the most aggressive mail-in voting plan in 2024? If you guessed the Trump campaign and Susie Wiles, you would be correct, my friends. And if you ought to know which state they have benefited the most from, that would be Florida, where your next governor, Byron Donald, said, oh, I disagree with this new bill. In Florida, we do it right. So
they do it right.
Of course, in red states where mailing is common and used by Republicans, all is well. But in blue states, there could be fraud. Therefore,
no. Just to be clear, Florida can actually count ballots and get them in. I wouldn't have.
I think Al Gore.
Hey, by the way, we don't have to worry about postmarks. We don't have to worry about signature verification. And hey, mail it in when you want.
Hold on. All right. Just one quick historical fun fact. Sean, in 2000 in Florida, were all the ballots counted postmarked?
I believe.
Don't worry, I'll answer for you.
I believe the judge ruled what, 5 counties?
And finish the sentence. We're not postmarked, but we'll count them anyway.
All right.
Somewhere Al Gore is sitting here, loves the Republican new philosophy.
All right, guys,
this is why Democrats are worried about it.
I'm sure we will be revisiting this again. Obviously, a topic that gets us all three of us buzzing quite a bit. Okay, let's talk about James Tallarico, because he is getting a bit of a last-minute surge after his appearance on Late Show was canceled. 5 million YouTube views on his interview.
But just to be clear, the interview wasn't canceled. The airing of it
didn't air. Correct. It happened, but it was not aired. It was just aired on YouTube. Mass Google searches for his name, a huge spike in people Googling him, and his campaign brought in $2.5 million in donations in 24 hours. So this is basically the story of Democratic opposition in, Trump 2.0 in a nutshell, right? And that is, if you become a martyr to the anti-Trump cause, you are going to be rewarded by the base. And it's not just Tallarico, it's Mark Kelly, it's Don Lemon, it's Gavin Newsom, it's Jimmy Kimmel. Dan, yesterday we talked about this very briefly. Like, would it matter? Would it hurt him if since he didn't get to do this interview? Turns out the opposite appears to be true.
Yeah, no, I mean, I think that what is kind of the irony of all of this is, I said for 2-3 years, the Biden administration and kind of Democrats' attacks on Trump helped fuel his comeback. And what's kind of happening now is all of these attacks using government kind of to weaponize the government to go after people. And look, it's like trying to find Al Capone on taxes, just like Democrats would say, hey, look, with everything that we alleged against Trump, there was a debate about what, we believe he did it. It went to court. The problem is the public doesn't like this stuff. Like, they just don't like it. And so you can argue the merits all day long, but what is happening is, just like it fueled Trump, it's fueling all of these figures. Don Lemon's not an elected official, But every time they go after a Democrat in a public way, it just juices and rallies people to that person's cause. And I think what would be ironic is I think Tallarico was not in a good place 48 hours ago. And you now may have an instance where you unintentionally boosted Tallarico and you may get Paxton. And that is not the fight the Trump White House if they could draw it up once. I mean, it's just an irony.
Sean, I mean, obviously Republicans, their base gets revved up when an administration official or the president himself goes after some of these Democrats, right? So, you know, They're speaking to their own base, but should they rethink some of this stuff, these strategies, because they're elevating some of these people?
The framing of this is so, you want to talk about the word ironic. You do know who's actually speaking out on this. Jasmine Crockett. So what did CBS actually say? Because again, this is where the lies and the misinformation get spread. CBS actually said that the equal time was not about a Republican. It was actually that Jasmine Crockett didn't get equal time. And Jasmine Crockett is on the record saying that this is, quote, not about the administration. This is about CBS's censorship. So I don't find myself too often quoting Jasmine Crockett. But the idea that this is about Trump going after Tallarico is a complete and utter lie. This is actually about CBS saying to Colbert, if you want to have one of the Democrats on, you must provide equal time to the other ones, Jasmine Crockett and that other third guy, right? So this is, and it's her that's lashing out and defending the administration, saying they owed me an opportunity to come on. This is about Stephen Colbert using a public airways to put his finger on the scale to weigh in favor of James Tallarico because he knows that Jasmine Crockett can't win a general election. So again, I know everyone thinks it's cool and easy to blame Trump and go after them and just make this about Trump and the unintended consequences. The reality is this was about defending Democrats, and CBS's statement and Jasmine Crockett's statement. And again, I know no one wants to actually talk about the truth and what's really happening, but that's what this was really about. And the facts actually back that up.
Well, I think where Democrats just would, I mean, again, the point of this topic was broader than just, you know, Texas is I think Crockett's been on Colbert a few times. And so I know what CBS said, but where we are in the world today is you have half the country now that doesn't believe them, right? They think, of course, they're going to say that. They have to say that. So, Sean, you may be right. But to a lot of people now, you know, whether it's ICE or really any Trump administration official, they just immediately say, well, I don't believe it anymore.
But just to be clear.
No, I hear you.
Stop. Let's just stop and tell me if you disagree with anything. CBS said to Colbert, hey, if you're going to have Tallarico, you've got to have other candidates. And what the New York Times and NBC and Politico all wrote was this was a Trump edict to go after CBS. It had nothing. No one from Trump said anything to anybody. It was CBS saying to their talent, if you do something, and no one disputes that.
Well, has anyone?
But they're telling their talent that, I mean, even if you take CBS's word that this is what they conveyed, they were pointing to changes in how these rules are interpreted, right? Like from
but again, remember what they said was, if you have Tallarico, you must have Crockett. That's what equal time says. That's what the law says. And we want to make sure that you don't tip the scales on the first day of early voting in Texas. I don't. Like, this is actually something that everybody should be on board with. Dan brought up the fact yesterday that Trump got a ton of media attention in 2015. By the way, he got that on cable news, not on the broadcast networks. So big distinction on public airways versus cable. But the bottom line is Republicans could have made the same case back then, too, on equal time. The bottom line is this is a corporate decision to abide by the law that would have benefited and changed Democrats. It had nothing to do with Donald Trump saying anything to anybody.
That's not true, Sean. They're changing the way they interpret things because of the way the administration is saying this no longer applies to talk shows, right? It used to be an assumption that news programs and talk shows like this were exempt from those types of rules. There is now, I don't know when it was, but like now there's this understanding that talk shows, they do have to follow these rules. Right. So like there was a change.
But the narrative that is being construed is that Trump is going after these guys. That's just simply not true. It was about balance in two other Democrats getting equal airtime.
Yeah, I totally get your point on and it's funny that Jasmine Crockett, like, clearly she sees this narrative as potent. Otherwise, she wouldn't be out there and being like,
I got to tell you, think about what, I mean, you teed this up correctly at the beginning, which is this guy, Jasmine Crockett, was a scent, right? You could not have picked a better day for this to happen. On the day of early voting starting, right? He gets this massive bump in airtime and attention and fundraising. You couldn't have scripted this better. If James Tallarico wins by 5 points or less on election day, Stephen Colbert will have interfered with this election to his benefit.
Okay, let's move on. So White House Chief of Staff Susie Wiles and James Blair, they convened this strategy session of cabinet officials, top admin officials at the Capitol Hill Club last night. And of course, the point of this was to talk about midterm messaging. The whole takeaway, focus on affordability, what we've done so far, get out. Susie Wiles apparently told cabinet folks to sort of get out into the country, go, make trips and talk in these districts about affordability issues. But at the same time, the lead this morning in Mike Allen's newsletter is brink of war. There is reporting, one of their the best, Trump foreign policy reporters writing this morning that we are on the cusp of an expansive military campaign in the Middle East, the biggest one we've seen in more than a decade, saying it could last a couple of weeks. Basically, the talks yesterday were not as productive as perhaps people suggested when they came out and said, everything, we're having good conversations. So let's just start there, Sean, because this is obviously something the administration has grappled with for a long time, right? Like the president doing a lot with foreign policy last year. There has been an attempt to sort of pivot back to the domestic discussion, but we could be on the cusp of a serious campaign in Iran.
Yeah, there's a couple issues, right? So, I mean, by the way, I did get a kick out of yesterday. Everybody's like, talks are productive, and Iran's going, we're going to sink your ships. It's generally not which they can't. But I did get a kick out of the sort of the mixed messaging coming out of Iran. So I'll just real quick on that. I do think that we are getting closer and closer to something being inevitable, unfortunately, because the stakes have gotten way too high for everyone to back down now. And it's a very different scenario. This is not a snatch and grab or a surgical effort as it was the last time when you send in the B-2s and bomb stuff and then, out. This is a much different, you can't just shoot tomahawks off the out of subs and call it a day. So this is a very bigger stakes deal in Iran. So let me put a pin in that for a second. That all being said, I think that the meeting and the effort that Susie and James had yesterday was spot on. And we can walk and chew gum at the same time. Like, this is not like the country will be captivated and say, oh my God, there's something going on in Iran. Nothing is going to happen. We're going to just sit and be glued. I'll give you an example. Pete Hegseth has been doing this tour around the country. And so I obviously follow Rhode Island news. He was in Quonset Point, which is this sort of military industrial park area that's multi-use, whatever, in Rhode Island. And he got fantastic local press about going there and what the DOD efforts, the Department of War efforts were, et cetera, et cetera. The point is that these cabinet guys could and should be everywhere. And Pete's been doing this in a bunch of different areas of the country, highlighting capabilities of the Department of War and some of the, in the lead up, especially in the lead up to America 250. These guys should be everywhere. And every time I have a pollster on, I had Jim McLaughlin on last night. I've had Mark Mitchell from Rasmussen and Brent Buchanan from Signal. It's like the same thing over and over again. All hands on deck, sell 24/7. Too many of these guys on our side are still in this idea that you're going to 6 weeks out from the election, put up some digital ads, 1,500 points of television and call it a day. That's not going to work anymore. These guys have to be out 7 days a week, 365, independent media, doing their own stuff. Eric Schmidt from Missouri does a fantastic job of really getting this kind of ethos about how to talk about issues and making life very, creating a channel for his constituents to see and hear him in a way that's not staged and canned. I get our side sits back and thinks that Trump can just carry the day every day of the week. And he does a tremendous amount. He can't do everything. And too many of our guys are doing not enough.
Dan, how are Democrats going to react when this campaign begins, if this reporting is correct?
Oh, I think Iran is the one issue where you actually get almost all agreement. Like, you don't hear the AOCs and Jasmine Crockett say we're with the mullahs in Iran. I mean, it is the one issue that most people all agree Iran is our sworn enemy. I think what's going to be interesting is it just, kind of then what? If we have a multi-week campaign, Sean and I have said this now for over a year, like, what comes next? I do want to flag it is just like remarkable that it's reported that Pete Hegseth and Pam Bondi were at this meeting about like, brawl politics. It was only a few years ago that would not, be ever accepted. It would be a major news story. But look, the other thing that happened yesterday on this topic that was just illuminating was J.D. Vance sat down with Martha McCallum on Fox News.
Yeah. And
she put to him, like, what do you say about the fact that your economic numbers are not great and you're losing in head-to-head, in the midterms about which party you prefer? And he was like, he made a joke like, Fox polls are not good. And she's like, I got a lot more polls that all say the same thing. Yeah. And so the challenge, I think, just continues to be that, as Sean said, like they've got a good story to kind of start telling. But if Cuba collapses and we go into Iran, and it just feels like every week it's another week where you say they talked about everything but affordability. And I think if you're Democrats, you just keep putting your head down and tell your candidates, just keep focusing like a laser beam on this and let Republicans have to answer for all the stuff that's going on in the world. I think, Sean, you and I both agree, by about June, people better start feeling the economy's turned, because if it doesn't, the cake gets baked.
The thing that I constantly think, it's sometimes you get handed a bad hand, right? And you're like, how do I make this okay? How do I sell this? Republicans have a solid hand right now. The economy is going in the right direction. Job numbers are going in the right direction. Foreign direct investment is going in the right direction. Go out there and sell it. It is the most unbelievably frustrating thing where literally it's like going to the doctor every day and he just says, all you need to do is get out, walk a mile, and someone comes back, sits on the couch and goes, gosh, I don't know what to do. I feel like we have the prescription right in front of us. We've got the tools to do it, and no one wants to do the work except, and Trump.
But it starts with Trump.
It
just starts with Trump.
Right. But the problem is that every Republican right now, and this, when it comes to campaigning, whatever, just goes, okay, well, he'll come out and endorse me. And Trump is the 800-pound gorilla, but our side has got to recognize that he can't carry the weight of the world every day.
I have heard this. Go ahead.
A lot of these foreign policy things, he's choosing the battle, right? He's chosen to put us now kind of on the precipice with Iran, right? Because he said, hey, I don't like this uprising and you're harming people. And maybe we do need to change the regime. I think we may need to take Greenland. He keeps putting these issues on the table. I think partly because he's a content machine. It's like always got to be action, something like I'm moving, but it's never the domestic side.
I don't know that it's
guys, we got to move on. We're at 9:15 and we've still got 3 more things we got to hit on here. So let's move on to the speculation about Samuel Alito. So USA Today had this story Monday that we could see the president get a 4th Supreme Court justice. There's this sort of speculation, it seems to be mostly on the left. So Sean, I'm very, very curious what you're hearing about this, that Alito, who's I think he's one of the oldest, second oldest justice on the court, joined the court 20 years ago. He apparently has a book coming out in October. So people are like, like that's when the the court's supposed to be in then. So maybe he's going to be peacing out. Thoughts on this, Sean? Do you know if he'll be leaving? And if he's not, do you think he should, just in case?
Sean, break the news.
He's
retiring. Yeah, I just talked to him. And so, look, I would say this not just about justices, but about cabinet members. I brought this up a couple of weeks ago. The beauty that you have if you're a Republican is you can wait till November, see how the Senate goes, and then make a decision. If we lose the Senate, I think you have to decide real quick. You have to have made that decision and say, I'm going to go. And those are the kind of conversations that you can back channel the White House and say, if we lose the Senate, I will announce my retirement. You be ready for an appointment. Because if you're Alito and Thomas in particular, I think really care about the institution and care about the legacy of the court. And I think would not want to ever worry about having to leave and subject a Democrat to replace them. Those guys, they understand just I think they care way too much. Both of them in particular.
Sean, if you were the Trump White House, wouldn't you rather have, Alito or Thomas announce their retirement this summer and juice the party? Like, hey, the Senate matters, right? If we don't have it in 4 months and Clarence Thomas has a heart attack, it is much harder. So I would almost think the White House would welcome.
So the problem is, look, I think from a conservative standpoint, Alito and Thomas are like the beacon. Like those guys are like anyone who is a real hardcore conservative looks at those two guys and say they are your North Star of judicial prudence, right? So you never want them to go. Like I want, like an IV drip set up over there. And like, I want Alito and Thomas forever. But I do think that I think that you're in danger because if you say they're going to leave, I get your point about juicing it, but I'd also be scared about the replacement. And I mean, like that, you throw a little bit too much into the mix that maybe it's not like, I don't know.
You have a base problem that they're not energized. I mean,
I agree with you on that. There's no question. You're right on that. The question is that the issue that gets them fired up?
Yeah.
If they were talking about replacing, Sotomayor and saying, hey, by the way, we keep the Senate, we get a rock solid, like, boom, you'd get people fired up. But I think there's a little scare. Like people get worried if you talked about Thomas or Alito leaving, you're probably getting a little like people nervous, like what's going to happen to the court.
Sean, there's been a lot of speculation that the president would choose Ted Cruz to be his next justice. Do you think that's realistic?
Sure. Yeah.
Okay.
I mean,
interesting.
I don't.
Can you imagine? He would bring a totally different dynamic to the court. He'd be out there Ted Cruz wants the spotlight. You know what I mean?
I think, but also I don't know. Ted. I mean, he was Solicitor General of Texas. The guy, he is a brilliant legal mind, and so I think no matter what you think of Ted as a senator, as a politician, like he really understands the law. I think he'd be a smart and a safe pick. Trump's comments, by the way, to your point, were brilliant because he said something to the effect of this. Republicans or Democrats would vote for you because they want to get you out of the Senate. And he said something to the effect of, and I think Republicans would vote for you too because they want you out of the Senate.
Yeah, there's that famous Lindsey Graham quote that if you shot Ted Cruz on the Senate floor, no one would bat an eye because they'd be fine with it. That's a terrible joke to make these days because, of all the political violence, but it just stands to show but I think colleagues have a love-hate relationship with him.
You would get a solid conservative voice. I think it's right. And he'd pass through and then Greg Abbott would pick a new senator. I just wonder if you're Ted Cruz, do you give up all your presidential ambitions to be a Supreme Court justice?
Yeah.
And I also think you have to say too, that 20 years ago, people, Sandra O'Connor had been in politics prior to getting into the court, that people would be skittish about such a kind of raw politician. But I don't think anyone now looks at the court and says they're apolitical. So I even think like the skittishness about someone who's so kind of historically partisan, I think people would be like, yeah, whatever.
Yeah. But the thing is, I think for all the reasons that we just said, Ted would fly through. I mean, his Republican colleagues would be like, great. Abbott's going to appoint a replacement. I mean, like win.
Let's talk about political entertainment. 2 quick items here. So Jimmy Kimmel, as we said at the top, is going to be headlining an upcoming fundraiser for the DCCC. That's House Democrats' big campaign arm. Looks like tickets are going from $25,000 to over $300,000. I think it's going to be.
Sean, you buying 2 or 3 or what are you buying?
Sean call me back. I have to check the dates.
Okay. All right.
And then the other piece of this is that Bruce Springsteen he announced his North America leg of his Land of Hope and Dreams tour. It's going to start in Minneapolis and on March 31st, and it's going to end here in DC on May 27th. And yes, he wants you to know that this is entirely a political move on his part and that it's a message he's sending. Where do you guys want to start on this? I mean, with the Jimmy Kimmel thing, the first thing, like, I was wondering, like, how much do like celebrity endorsements and celebrities showing up at these fundraisers, like, does it really help in terms of raising money?
I mean, it's a draw. Like, it does help a little bit, but I think this goes to the idea of the courts have become fairly political. I mean, you now have so many people on cable from both parties who attend fundraisers, who attend rallies, who speak at events, that I think the lines have been so blurred now of politics is culture, culture is politics, that, you know, I think they do help sell tickets, whether it's for a fundraiser or a, you know, campaign rally.
Yeah, look, I think a couple things. One, the Kimmel thing proved my point earlier about Colbert, which is these guys are not late night. I mean, this has gone from late night hosts who are funny and entertaining to political activists, right? And that's the sad part about this, is that it's not funny anymore. It's literally like it is ridiculous to think that late night shows are literally just Sunday shows at night for Democrats. Like, it's not. Kimmel and Colbert in particular have completely, utterly changed, and I think ended the landscape. Like, Colbert's going the way of the end of, like, an end of an era. Like, they've ruined late night, what it was why it was sort of sacrosanct for a while. It was this end of the night thing that you got to watch something and got entertained. They've ruined that for everybody. And I don't really care. I mean, like, I think there's a difference. I don't believe they should be using the public airways to promote a particular party, because that's all they do. But that being said, I mean, look, can they raise some money? Sure. If you're a celebrity, people go. But I think the Democrats have tried this in the past. Kamala and Hillary brought out Katy Perry and Beyonce, and it was an utter fail. So if you think that anyone cares who Jimmy Kimmel thinks people should be voting for, God bless you. I don't think that, and I think, you know, look, I've said the same thing about music. I like a lot of artists, or I like the music of a lot of artists that are very leftist. I don't like going to concerts where they sort of you're charging someone for a ticket to go hear their music, and then they make it all about a political cause. They have the right to do it. They have a First Amendment right to do it. I think it's stupid business wise, and it utterly, you know, like, I think Springsteen is past his prime. I don't enjoy his concerts. I've been to one before. I didn't enjoy it. I think he's ruining his brand, but that's his right. He can do what he wants. He's earned it. But I think it's unfortunate that we've turned going to a concert into a political convention.
Dan,
I mean, look, it cuts both ways, right? There are people, you know, who the right have fully embraced, whose concerts and performances, look at Kid Rock, have become like just full on outright political statements. So
yeah, I'm really Nicki Minaj concerts. Like,
yeah, I mean, our culture reflects our politics now, and there are more. There used to basically only be entertainers with the left. Those on the right were in closets. Now they're more and more out, and they're more and more visible, and Trump has embraced them.
Yeah.
So, yep.
Let's take a couple questions. All right, here we got John from Twitter regarding the situation in.
In Cuba.
There it is. Regarding the situation in Cuba in the fuel blockade, is it now open U.S. policy that inflicting civilian harm to pressure governments to comply is not only acceptable but encouraged?
For those who haven't been following this, we talked about this a little bit over right after Venezuela. What's going on in Cuba is utterly remarkable. I mean, by all accounts, Cuba is imploding from within. They have no oil. They are canceling flights because they can't refuel planes. They can't provide gasoline for garbage trucks to pick up garbage. So it's all over the street. Schools are not in session because they can't afford, there's no fuel for electricity. Cuba
Trash is piling up too.
Yeah, I mean, Cuba is collapsing. And I think it is, on the one hand, to Dr. John's point, you cringe at children and families kind of almost starving and being miserable. On the other hand, it appears the Cubans are beginning to come to the table in some capacity. And for 80 years, we've talked about regime change in Cuba.
Yeah, there's this bit in Axios today saying that Marco Rubio is basically looking for the equivalent of Delcy Rodriguez in Cuba, like that he's in touch with the grandson of Castro, right? Like he's actually they think they can find somebody there who will allow them to do what they did in Venezuela and Cuba. So anyway.
I will say, I think it's a very interesting point, Dr. John, that you're bringing up, in terms of recognizing that, like, there's an element of the people have to suffer but part of this is, I think, a recognition, unfortunately, that in order for Cuba in particular, like the only way to do it is to force that uprising to occur, that it's not going to occur through other diplomatic means, et cetera. So it's a great, to be honest with you, I actually think this is going to be one of those moments to, looking back in 10 years that we'll say, was that a good move or not in terms of affecting change, and what price had to be paid for it or not. But I actually think it's a great question that you almost put a pin right now in and say, save this for 5 or 10 years from now, look back and say, did that work? Or wow, look at the humanitarian consequences that had to be paid for that.
Well, and don't lose fact, because it's a political show. If Cuba collapses and there are desperate people, what happens? Do hundreds of thousands try to get immediately to the United States because suddenly they can flee? Do people from the Cuban Americans in primarily Miami flee back to Cuba? Like, I'm sure the State Department and national security teams are thinking through, if we achieve our result of regime change, again, this is like Iran, then what?
Well, to your point, Dan, it's interesting because there's when you talk about wet foot, dry foot, we have a specific immigration status for Cubans. I mean, they get on U.S. Soil and they are protected. So it's not the same as, someone who comes up from South America. And that this is a very different beast. That you're right. State Department's got to be running models saying, how are we handling? And also you got to think about like Miami-Dade, like what are they doing as a county to say, how are we going to handle the services of this? If this happens, what are we doing humanitarian wise to provide shelter? Or how do we handle the influx of these folks? So I'd
be curious how MAGA world, after focusing on asylum reforms, would feel if we start, let's say we allow a couple 100,000 Cubans in.
Let's take another question.
Probably okay.
Better not be voting.
Okay, Jay Schwartz. Thoughts on when Warsh will actually get confirmed as Fed chair? He hasn't been formally nominated yet, likely due to the existing DOJ investigation into Powell. And the Fed still hasn't replied to Piro's questions. Who will blink first, Piro or Powell?
I think the Warsh issue is probably more a background check. His family holdings, because his wife is from an extraordinarily wealthy family, are probably pretty complicated, and they're just having to get everything together and just double check there's nothing in there so you don't put them forward and then discover afterwards, whoops. I don't see how Warsh does not get through in a timely manner, because I think ultimately Thune would bring him straight to the floor, bypass the committee. For those who don't know, Tom Tillis is saying he will not approve any Fed chair nomination until DOJ ends investigating Jerome Powell. And, so the idea is if all Dems vote against and all Republicans for, and Tillis didn't vote for Warsh, it would be stuck in committee. I think Republicans would just bypass the committee. I don't know, Sean, if you disagree. But
my question on this is, like, what does Tom Tillis need to see to believe this investigation is dead? Because, I mean, the prevailing narrative right now is that the administration touched the stove on this, felt it was hot from the Republican blowback and sort of reined this investigation in. But, like, does Tillis need to see them say, oh, it's over? Or like, because it seems like
I think he wants a letter. I think he wants a formal declaration that we have closed the investigation.
I didn't even know they did that. Do they typically do that? Investigation is closed. Here's your letter.
They can if they need to. I mean,
Sean, do you think they'll do that? Do you think the admin will ever do that?
What?
Say the investigation is closed and give him
Not
a letter like that?
I doubt it.
Yeah.
Because to be honest with you, again, this is kind of funny. If you're Tillis, you can have a problem with what the administration did. I mean, like, he has a right to have that problem. But then he's equally guilty of saying, I'm going to pressure DOJ to do something that I want in order to get an action. So it's like you're on the one hand, you're saying, I don't like what they did, but then I want to interfere with a potential investigation because I want an outcome. So it's ironic that he's using this tactic because my guess is the way it ends is they quietly whisper in someone's ear and say, we're not proceeding. But let's just back up a second. Powell's term goes till May, so there's no rush. I think Dan's right. This is a background thing. I mean, this is massive amounts of paperwork. You've got to document all of your holdings and talk. I mean, like, these forms are not easy. And especially like if you own a lot of stuff, you've sold a lot of stuff, you've got to go through not just your financial holdings, but things that you've said and done and written, interviews that you've given. It's a bear to get through, especially for something like that. So I have a feeling that, and there's no rush, right? There's no reason to like, he's not being forced to do this. The Senate doesn't need to act right now. There's plenty of time. I think it'll happen. I think Tillis will be satisfied, but he's right. I mean, Tillis also doesn't want to go out being the guy. Powell's term is up. So you have to do something at some point.
Guys, we are at time now. Tomorrow, I'm going to try to move us quicker to get to more questions. I know I've seen a couple of you in the chat with some good questions and saying we should take more of them. So appreciate your feedback on that. Sean, what do you have coming? 8:30 or what do you have later
so today? We talk about affordability. The former nominee for the Bureau of Labor Statistics, Mr. E.J. Antoni, who's a noted economist at the Heritage Foundation, is going to join me tonight to talk about where we are in the economy, what the agenda needs to be or should be on affordability. So if you're interested in the economy and the politics of it, and Trump's former nominee to lead the BLS, E.J. Antoni, tune in at 6.
And I am going to be writing later today about, in my newsletter, The Inner Circle, following up on something Dan actually has talked about a lot, which is, the Democrats going after these big corporations if they flip the majority. There's been a couple of things percolating in the past 48 hours on this. And then I got a pretty great download from someone in the know on this Democrat on the House side. So if you're interested, we could have a Democratic majority. What does it mean for corporations? So sign up at rachelbade.com. It's free. Okay, guys, we will see you back tomorrow at 8:30.
Oh, by the way, remember, State of the Union night. Be with us.